everyone. Classroom is in session. Oh, that was corny. I apologize. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of your casual conversation with me, your friend, Carlz. Well, this is the only show that I know of where the same guy tries to reinterpret, that's a good one, his thoughts about media in general and then spews them out to the world in the universal language of English. What is that term for the language that everybody uses? Well, I was thinking about Miranda rights, but that's wrong. That's some law shit. But anyways, today's question involves essence. I know the last time I was talking about metaphysics for that masterpiece that is Hamlet. Damn, that movie is good. Should have won more prizes. But anyways, this is not about philosophy or anything. I think most of us have a notion of what essence might be when we think about things and their definitions, when we think in simple terms what makes something what it is. The point is, and why the question for essence has been kind of like a contended idea for all of our existence as Homo sapiens, is because basically we're trying to find for one meaning for something that perhaps has many. Nevertheless, I think there are some things in our state of affairs as a society, as an species as well, that we might consider to be already kind of like the closest to essence that we can get. One of those things, one example for me for that, is a really specific example, is the essence of science fiction. To me, the essence of science fiction, without saying more stuff and just taking too much time on it, is that science fiction is a genre of questions. Science fiction is the way we try to question ourselves as a society, as an species. That's a hard one to say. This is a way we wonder. We make ourselves the questions we dare to ask about the future. But unlike plain old fantasy, which is great by the way, or any other delusions of psychosis or whatever, the thing about science fiction is that it's somehow grounded on reality. So we make the good questions on this basis because somehow those questions can reflect on ourselves now. There's a connection to it. So there is I was about to say that Star Wars was bad science fiction, but not necessarily. But the way I see my way into Star Trek, which, by the way, is today's topic, is through Star Wars. When I was a kid, of course, the first thing I experienced was Star Wars. And Star Wars is fantastic, it's entertaining, it's amusing, but as George Lucas himself has said, it's all about this reinterpretation of classic Greek and epics of, I don't know, all these Homer, Simpson, Bart Simpson, all of those guys. Homer. But it was supposed to be an epic in space, and that's it. So those type of narratives, they appeal to these more poetical, primal kind of like ideas of humankind, justice and everything, which is all good and dandy. But those ideas seen on the big spectrum of poetry, they get even more murky. We already know we live in a world where things that's supposed to be universal, such as justice or fairness, are not so at all. So you see, these type of things are well wishes or something like that. Like, oh, I wish this is what like good and bad would be. But then as you grew up, I found out the glory, the masterpiece that is Star Trek The Next Generation. And Star Trek did something that Star Wars could never do with me. Star Wars, of course, it was fun. It opened up my fun centers, if you want to call it like that. But Star Trek showed me that, as I said, the real essence of science fiction lies in the questions it asks. The primal example for this, for example, is probably my favorite The Next Generation episode called The Measure of a Man, where they ponder whether Data, the android in the show, has quote-unquote a soul. But the way the show does it is really interesting in a way that, as I said at the beginning, is grounded. We're not talking about poetically what his soul means, or poetically what a soul or what personhood means. We don't know, so spoilers. The episode has Captain Picard representing Data and William Riker representing the guy from Starfleet who wants to disassemble Data and research on him. It's worth mentioning that the guy from Starfleet, even though he's supposed to be quote unquote the bad guy, he's a good guy. He wants to disassemble Data to learn from him, to better Starfleet society and everything. He has this grandiose idea of having synthetic human beings, androids, helping us. But he doesn't ponder on whether Data has rights or not. So you see, the way this science fiction works is steering away from poetry, steering away from well wishes or from metaphors. And it's grounded in reality, and it's grounded in something that we most certainly would like to address at some point. So in the end of the episode, Captain Picard says, he engages the rest of the audience, and he says, like, do I know whether Mr. Data here has a soul or is a person? He certainly fits into some of the categories proposed for a person to be recognized as such. He might fail in a couple of ones, maybe in one. And he asked the masterfully asked question, like, what if he does? What if he fulfills all of these categories? And he goes around and he goes, do you know? Do you know? And of course nobody can answer. And he goes like, I don't know. But if it so happens, this person right here, this creature, this android is indeed a person, I won't be the one to deny his right to exist. If we do that, we set a precedent to the future. A negative precedent, a precedent based on negativity and in discrimination. Are we ready to face that? And of course, the court fails in the favor of Data, making him a person. That is brilliant. That is brilliant writing. That is a brilliant setting. And as I said, it's science fiction at its best. It proposes questions that we will certainly have to answer, probably more sooner than later. Jump 20 years into the future, and we arrive at Star Trek Starfleet Academy, the latest live action in the long-living sci-fi franchise. Starfleet Academy, for those of you who don't know, it's about Starfleet Academy. Starfleet has been kind of like downgraded, like they don't have an academy. They're not training cadets since the event in the lore called the Burn, which decimated Starfleet. I won't go long into that. The point is, this is a school. This is a school for new cadets and new recruits. So the series focuses on this group of students, group of cadets, with different backstories, different backgrounds, and they all come together in this new Starfleet Academy, who what happens to be in a really creative and wonderful way, it's inside of a starship called the USS Athena. That's a great idea. So, what did I like, what I did not like, and what's so important about Starfleet Academy? Starfleet Academy is important. Let's begin by that, because, and this is why I started the episode talking about essence, Starfleet Academy has shown us that we are, as fans of Star Trek, Trekkies if you want it, we are fighting for the soul or essence of this franchise. We are living this moment in particular where, for some fucking reason, everybody seems to be so inclined or has such an intent on either killing or sustaining an image of Trek that is so bizarre. Back in the day, they wouldn't imagine having to deal with the ratings and politics as they do now. And why is that? That is one of the reasons why then we go to whether I liked or not Starfleet Academy. I liked Starfleet Academy because it still retains that Star Trek essence at heart. There is a way of telling things that it's highly dependent on context. So, for example, so many people have complained about Starfleet Academy because it has teens in them. Because these teenagers, or like a little bit older than teenagers, behave like teenagers. This baffles me. This baffles me that this is a critique for it. But let's engage it. Okay, these are teens, they behave quite hormonal. There are plenty of scenes during the show where they deal with bullying and they deal with teenage romance. It's kind of cheesy. But how is that not compatible with either Star Trek, science fiction, or general narratives about teenagers at all? Why is that incompatible? And as I said, I liked it because despite all of that, it retains the spirit of Star Trek. It deals with alien and personal identities by having a seemingly queer Klingon, which of course you can imagine how that triggered people. It deals with, for example, problems with authority by having the main character kind of like struggling with Starfleet, which in turn reflects on the essence of Starfleet by his dynamic with the captain, with the headmaster of Starfleet, of the Academy. We have Sam, which is a photonic being. So we have more commentary on synthetic beings, which is completely expanded over the next generation and through even Discovery. Because as you might not remember, Discovery also has a story arc about artificial intelligence and about the rights of non-corporeal sentient beings. All of those questions are there. We have the politic questions through the Betazoid angle. How to incorporate different cultures into a governing body. There are like so many questions. The essence of it. There are so many questions. And of course they are portrayed in kind of like a cheesy, dramatic way that is attached to the fact that they are teenagers. But then we go to what I didn't like about the show. And what I didn't like about the show, well, there's one thing that I truly didn't like, but it's something that I haven't liked since the latter half of Discovery, which is the starship designs. I don't really like that wavy thing they have going on. And everything is disjointed, like everything floats around. I like it. But the thing that I did like about Starfleet Academy has nothing to do with the show, but it has to do with what it showed. It showed the most toxic sides of Trek fandom. And this is the biggest danger to the soul of a show and a franchise like this. The toxic fandom. We are in a day and age where toxicity runs rampant. And for the life of me, I cannot see toxic fandom and Star Trek being together. I don't understand it. So in preparation for this episode, I went and read some comments in Star Trek's Instagram, or like Roddenberry Foundation, or like many other fan accounts on IG about Star Trek. And this is so maddening, and like, because so many of the negative comments are like, this show sucks, dot. This is woke, dot. So even if they hate on it, they don't even hate on it properly, which enrages me. How is that the spirit of Star Trek, or of civilized discussion at all? This show is about teenagers learning to be teenagers, or learning to be adults, and growing and nurturing each other in the context of Starfleet. You know, shining a light on what it means and what Starfleet means. You know, this sense of openness, this sense of progress and empowerment, of union and peace and cooperation. So one of the only comments that I saw that had some substance to it read, this was one actually was reacting to a story with Captain Picard extract. And the comment was something of like, it said something like, this is what real Star Trek was. Men asking the important questions. That. And I was like, okay. You can see what instantly triggers anyone. Men asking the big questions. Men. So heavily implying that only men can ask the important questions. Heavily implying that Trek after the Next Generation didn't ask any important questions. Well, we don't even have to address the first one. That's just stupid, right? That's just dumb. Every sentient being can ask the questions, big, small, or medium. Every sentient being can do it. And every sentient being has been doing it in Star Trek for as long as we can. For as long as we know. Now, the woke angle. That's another stupid angle that I've never understood why people are so keen to use that as an argument to talk about science fiction. You know, why nobody bat an eye when people were saying that Lando was pansexual? Well, some people were. Maybe because he was just a man, so he was like, yeah, it's cool when he fucks androids. Like, he's so cool and swag. Like, he fucks everybody. Then somebody suggests, oh, but he's pansexual, so perhaps he fucks men as well. No way, man. Like, why is that part of science fiction? Out of all the important questions you can ask, somebody's sexuality is not one of them. That is a question that we should have moved over for centuries. You love whoever you want to love. You fuck whoever you want to fuck. That shouldn't be a question. And what is the danger of that? What is the danger of the line of argument of criticism that brought Starfleet Academy to an abrupt end because they canceled after season 2? What is the big danger? And what I didn't like about the show, that as you might have already noticed has nothing to do with the show, is that we have opened the gates for not modern, not sci-fi, not fantasy. We have opened wide the gates to welcome current day politics to Star Trek. Between that train of thought, the really stupid kind of like arguments online by supposed fans, or like this toxic fandom, and the commercial side of things, Paramount being owned, CBS and Paramount being so highly politically charged. We invited pundits, TV, and politicians to talk about and give all of those dumb arguments. Oh, this Star Trek was a big American institution, now have is wokified. We invited not criticism, we invited not constructive approaches, we invited manipulative politics to Star Trek. We invited current times manipulative politics that we know is just assholes manipulating the speech to ensure their power, their succession, and their political, how can you say, like human resource, their votes basically. We have invited that to a world, a science fiction fantasy world in the future, where that shit is supposed to be over. It's like cramming the past into the future. And why is this so related to the show that I have to point it out as why I didn't like the show? Because you can't avoid it. From here on, you could not ever talk again about this show, Starfleet Academy, without it, and it's so tiring. We should talk about just the show, just about the characters, just about Starfleet, just about the story of the show itself. Spoiler, season 1 ends up with a trial. I mentioned Measure of a Man because trials are important in Star Trek. That is how the next generation begins, with a trial. And why are trials so important? Because they are battlefields of ideas. You can have all the phasers, starships, and like explosions, but in the end, where the important things come to fruition is in the battlefield of ideas. And in season 1, it ends up, of course, with a kind of like extremely set up and kind of like dramatized trial, but it is a trial. It is a trial for part of the soul of Starfleet, part of the soul of a person who sees themselves and their actions through the eyes of the values of Starfleet. So it makes you wonder, question, how do we synchronize, how do we understand, or how do we see these modern values in actions that seem so current? As it is military intervention, or the repercussions of military intervention, the trauma of children born out of war. These are all current important questions, but they seem to be shadowed and like brought to a complete, can you say, like irrelevantness over the online hating of this show. There's one criticism of the show that I think it has some ground, and it's the people that sort of say Star Trek is supposed to be more about the exploration and everything. That has some sense in a logistical way. So if you don't get Star Trek show so often, and what you want to see is about exploration and everything, if you don't get it, I see your frustration. But in Starfleet Academy, you have a lot of world building. You have a lot of kind of like world building. That is the best way of putting it. You have an expansion of it. Of course, it can't be just about exploring. And one thing that pisses me off is that Star Trek has tried to do that. They 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 pander to these fans, quote unquote fans, and they're like, okay, let's stick to exploration. So they release Strange New Worlds, and people are still complaining that there is an episode that is a musical, or like they try, and that's an irony because they claim and they crave exploration, but they don't allow the show to really explore. It's not just about space, it's about science fiction, future, and exploring what it means for society, for multi-species societies, for the science of space exploration that happened during some parts of Discovery. Like, everything is there. So in the end, it's politics that kills shows or delays shows like Star Trek Prodigy, or Starfleet Academy. And now people have pointed out correctly that there's no new Star Trek shows in development. For the first time in a long time. They are sticking to Starfleet Academy Season 2, which is already done, and I think it comes out next year, because in the middle of this year we have the last season of Strange New Worlds. And then there's nothing. And why there's nothing? Is it because there are no more subjects to explore, no more galaxies to explore? No, there's nothing because they are afraid. They are afraid of politics. They are afraid of toxic fandom. That means the shows don't sell properly. They are afraid of money. They are afraid of politics. They are afraid of anything but the creative endeavor of sci-fi storytelling. And that is just disheartening. Is that a word? Yeah, it totally is, right? So I of course, you can tell by now that I use this instance not so much to talk about Starfleet Academy, but talk about Star Trek as a franchise as a whole. And I had to do it. I had planned to do a weekly show talking about the episode of each episode of Starfleet Academy, but I don't like doing like too short of an episode. It would have been like 5 minutes or something, because even though there are subjects that are good to explore, most of them expand outside of the show. But there are so many great things about it. Especially the episode about sorry, I forgot the character's name, the Klingon and the photonic being. Those two episodes are great, and it's also kind of like a trial, like in between. But the character development was great, and the story was also great because it heavily implied kind of like tenets of Starfleet itself. The couple of episodes of exploration and space battles were good. The budget and the production design was great. The design of the Athena is great. It wasn't a groundbreaking show, but it could have been. it could have expanded into exploration, into more conflict of interspecies, kind of like conflict, conflict of conflict. It could have expanded to be so much more. So even though there isn't that much to say about season 1, we can surely see there were seeds of fun things to come. There were, and they were squashed by politics and the toxicity of current days fandom and social media, which is sad, man. So, what is the future of the essence of Star Trek? That's an even harder question to answer, because above everything, what the Starfleet Academy experience has showed us is that our beloved franchise is dependent or held hostage by some financial political shit that has nothing to do with the creative side of it. And I think that people that are like critics and haters of it are not doing any justice to the franchise they proclaim to love. Like none whatsoever. You know? And you've seen this show, you've seen this franchise, and you did not understand it. If you want to criticize something that you don't like, you bring it to the table, to the discussion of ideas. That's it. I don't like this. This is my reasoning. This is why it could be. But if you go online and you do like just hating comment, or like, what is that shit they do now? Review bombing. Why is that a discussion? Why is that an argument? Why? How can you see that as something fruitful for anyone? It will cancel your shows. It will give you less of what you supposedly love. It will invite people that don't share your passion, non-fans, politicians, and manipulators. And they have a lot of power. You are foolish if you don't see the frailty this thing has. This IP controlled by media conglomerates that are like affected by politicians and money. How can you not see how frail it is? You know? That just breaks your heart. You see that as just review bombing in fucking Rotten Tomatoes or whatever. But you're clearly not seeing how frail the world of creativity is. And the more we let it be kind of like fall under the pressure of politicians and like money, the more we're gonna lose them. We're gonna lose the space of creativity. We're gonna lose this. And we will be forced to dream on our own. Maybe pop in a pill and well, you can dream on your own. What? Fuck it, right? Fuck it, man. It's gonna be sad to not have Star Trek. But I guess I'm too lazy to write like fan Star Trek. That's why I'm not a writer or a showrunner, man. That's why I'm a consumer. You know? If I could, if I was enlightened enough and had the capacity to dream this shit on my own, I wouldn't even need it, man. But I need it, and you are killing it by being a dumbass. That's it. We'll see what happens in the future. I'm pretty sure Star Trek won't die, though. like of course I'm being between pessimistic and plain old sad because I love Star Trek and I don't want it to die, and I don't think it will, but that fear is always there because of how things are going. But regardless of all of that, I need it. And if I'm using this show to give some perspective on the franchise and its frailty and its, I was gonna say the legacy, but that's for food, right? But if I'm using it for that, even if it's just for that, I think Starfleet Academy has somehow succeeded. If it made us think about this, and if we can come out of this together as Trek fans and open for our franchise to explore, to evolve, and to keep asking the questions we sorely need asked, instead of giving space to assholes that come to like make some political statement out of our show. Well, let's see what's happened. I don't want to be more. I'm not mad. I'm just sad. So, thank you all for listening. Thank you all for being here for another week. I apologize. My voice is still a bit rough, and hopefully, I wish by having a rough voice I could sound like Nat King Cole or something, but I just sound like the same dumb bald guy, but a little bit rough. Thank you for listening. See you all next week with hopefully something more positive. I have some ideas, but they might be negative again. Ho ho. Emo emote for you and me. Take care, everyone. Bye bye.